Backlash is growing over where the world's top bottled water producer gets its supplies.
What if I told you that the company behind your morning coffee, your children's chocolate milk, and even the bottled water you think is pure and safe, has a history so dark it could change the way you see your own kitchen?
Is Nestle world's largest consumer goods company secretly adding processed sugar to your baby's food?
Behind the wholesome, family-friendly image of Nestle, there's a disturbing truth the world's largest food company doesn't want you to know. Independent investigations, whistleblower reports, and court documents have uncovered a pattern of shocking behavior. For decades, this corporate giant has been linked to child slave labor, aggressive marketing tactics that led to infant deaths, and the systematic draining of essential water from communities in crisis. The trusted brand you grew up with could be built on a foundation of human suffering and environmental destruction, all while you've been buying their products. And the most disturbing part? Some of their most celebrated brands are at the very center of these scandals. Stay with me, because I'm about to expose 4 of Nestle's darkest secrets. And when you learn about the last one, you'll never look at that familiar red logo the same way again. First on our list is a secret hidden inside one of the world's most beloved treats: chocolate. Nestle is one of the biggest buyers of cocoa on the planet, sourcing a huge portion from West Africa, particularly the Ivory Coast. The company has spent millions on marketing campaigns featuring happy families sharing Kit Kats and Nesquik. But behind that sweet picture is the bitter reality of child labor. A landmark 2021 report by the University of Chicago, commissioned by the U.S. Department of Labor, found that over 1.5 million children were still working in the cocoa fields of the Ivory Coast and Ghana. Investigators documented kids as young as 10 using sharp machetes to harvest cocoa pods, being exposed to dangerous pesticides without protection, and working brutally long hours instead of attending school. This isn't a new problem. It's a decades-long crisis Nestle has repeatedly promised and failed to solve. As far back as 2001, the company signed the Harkin-Engel Protocol, an international agreement to end the worst forms of child labor in their supply chain. They set a deadline of 2005. That deadline passed. They set new goals, launched sustainability programs like the Nestle Cocoa Plan, and stamped their products with certifications from groups like the Rainforest Alliance. Yet, the problem persists. In 2021, the company was even named in a U.S. Supreme Court case brought by former child slaves who claimed they were trafficked from Mali and forced to work on Ivorian cocoa farms that supplied Nestle. While the court ultimately dismissed the case on jurisdictional grounds, the horrific allegations brought the issue to the world stage. Why does this keep happening? The economics are brutal. Nestle's relentless demand for cheap cocoa keeps market prices so low that impoverished farmers often can't afford to hire adult labor, creating a system that relies on exploiting children. According to Fairtrade International, many of these farmers live on less than $1 a day. The company's response has been a masterclass in corporate deflection. They issue statements condemning child labor and highlight their investments in monitoring systems. But critics argue these systems are full of loopholes and cover only a fraction of their vast supply chain. For millions of consumers, a chocolate bar is a simple pleasure. But for countless children, it's a symbol of a stolen childhood, a reality that Nestle's glossy advertising will never show you. But if profiting from child labor is horrifying, the next secret reveals how the company's ambition led to a global health crisis that cost babies their lives. If you thought child labor was the darkest part of Nestle's history, their baby formula scandal shows just how far the company will go in the pursuit of profit. In the 1970s, Nestle launched an aggressive marketing campaign to sell its infant formula in developing countries across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Their strategy was sophisticated and ruthless. They hired women dressed as nurses to visit new mothers in hospitals and villages, handing out free samples of formula. These milk nurses promoted the product as a modern, healthy alternative to breastfeeding, a symbol of Western prosperity. The campaign was a huge commercial success, but it created a catastrophic public health disaster. Millions of mothers, convinced by the marketing, abandoned breastfeeding in favor of formula. But in communities with no access to clean drinking water or proper sanitation, this decision was often a death sentence. To prepare the formula, mothers mixed the powder with contaminated local water, leading to severe diarrhea, malnutrition, and dehydration in infants. Furthermore, many impoverished families couldn't afford to keep buying the expensive formula, so they would overdilute it to make it last longer, essentially starving their babies of vital nutrients. The result was a tragedy of unimaginable scale. International aid agencies began linking a dramatic rise in infant mortality directly to Nestlé's marketing tactics. The ensuing global outrage sparked one of the largest consumer boycotts in history, which began in 1977 and lasted for years. Activists accused the company of getting babies hooked on formula, as the free samples would cause a mother's own breast milk to dry up, leaving her with no choice but to buy the product. The scandal became so notorious that it led the World Health Organization to adopt the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes in 1981, a set of rules designed to stop this kind of predatory marketing. Yet, even today, organizations like the International Baby Food Action Network accuse Nestlé of continuing to find loopholes and violate the spirit of the code in many parts of the world. It was a calculated business strategy that treated the world's most vulnerable mothers and babies as a new, untapped market, with consequences that are still felt today. But while this scandal targeted the vulnerable, our next case involves a resource that every single person needs to survive. Nestlé isn't just the world's largest food company. It's also the largest producer of bottled water, with brands like Poland Spring, Arrowhead, and Pure Life. They market their water with images of pristine mountain springs and untouched nature. But the reality of how they get that water is a story of corporate exploitation. For years, Nestlé has been targeting small, often struggling, communities, extracting millions of gallons of their groundwater for next to nothing, and then selling it back to the public at an enormous markup. One of the most flagrant examples happened in California during one of the worst droughts in the state's history. As residents faced mandatory water restrictions, banned from watering their lawns, and urged to take shorter showers, Nestlé's Arrowhead brand was pumping up to 62 million gallons of water a year from the San Bernardino National Forest. Their permit to do so? It had expired in 1988. For nearly 30 years, they continued to drain this precious resource from a drought-stricken region on a zombie permit, paying an annual fee of only a few $100s. Local activists and environmental groups were outraged. They argued that Nestlé was privatizing a public resource, profiting from a climate crisis, while the ecosystem and local communities suffered. This wasn't an isolated incident. In the small town of Everett, Michigan, Nestlé was permitted to pump up to 400 gallons per minute from a local well for its Ice Mountain brand, paying a mere $200 a year to the state for the privilege. Meanwhile, the company fought against local efforts to stop them, pouring millions into legal battles against citizens who were simply trying to protect their water table. The business model is shockingly simple. Take a natural resource that belongs to everyone, often for free, put it in a plastic bottle, and sell it for thousands of times the cost. According to food and water watchdogs, the profit margin on bottled water can be astronomical. And when confronted, Nestlé's defense has consistently been that they are operating legally and creating jobs. But critics say they are creating a dangerous precedent where a corporation's thirst for profit is prioritized over a community's basic right to water. But if exploiting a natural resource for profit is disturbing, the final secret on our list shows what happens when the products themselves become a direct threat to your family's safety. The final secret on our list isn't about ethics, but about a terrifying failure of safety that turned a beloved kitchen staple into a source of poison. In 2015, Nestlé faced one of its biggest crises to date in India, a country where its Maggi brand instant noodles were a household name, consumed by hundreds of millions of people every day. It was the ultimate comfort food, cheap, quick, and trusted by generations. That trust was shattered when food safety regulators in the state of Uttar Pradesh announced they had found dangerously high levels of lead in Maggi noodle samples, up to 17 times the permissible limit. The news sparked a nationwide panic. Lead is a potent neurotoxin, especially harmful to children, and can cause irreversible damage to the brain and nervous system. As other states launched their own tests and confirmed the findings, the story exploded. The Indian government's Food Safety Authority quickly declared the noodles unsafe and hazardous for human consumption and ordered Nestlé to pull the product from every shelf in the country. It was one of the largest and most dramatic food recalls in India's history. 9 million packets of noodles were destroyed. Nestlé's immediate response made the crisis worse. The company vehemently denied the allegations, insisting their own internal tests showed the noodles were safe. They challenged the regulator's findings in court, a move that many consumers saw as arrogant and evasive. For months, the brand that had been a cornerstone of Indian kitchens was now a symbol of corporate negligence. The economic fallout was immense. Nestlé lost over $60 million in the recall, and its market share plummeted. Although the company eventually won a court battle to overturn the ban and relaunched the product after new testing, its reputation was left in tatters. The investigation suggested the contamination may have come from the raw ingredients used in the noodles flavor packet. It was a horrifying reminder that even a massive global company could fail at the most basic level, ensuring its product wasn't toxic. So what have we uncovered? From the child labor hidden in our chocolate bars to the predatory marketing that cost infants their lives, from the draining of community water supplies to the lead-contaminated noodles that poisoned a nation's trust. One truth stands out. Nestlé's carefully crafted image as a wholesome, life-enhancing company hides a pattern of behavior that prioritizes profit over people, ethics, and even basic safety. And this brings us to the bigger question. If the world's largest food company, with all its resources and influence, has a record like this, what does that say about the global food system and the corporations we trust to feed our families every single day? If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone who deserves to know the truth. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our next investigation into the hidden corners of the food industry. Together, we can pull back the curtain on what's really in our everyday products.